Hello, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to do round 3 of my Intimidating Reads TBR. 3 years ago in July, I made a random video where I listed 12 random books that intimidated me, that if I did not read them in the next 12 months, something bad would happen. I never came up with what bad thing would happen, but then I went on to filming a vlog where I, in part 1, reacted to that original video and said whether or not I had read the books, and then I gave myself the last 4 months of those 12 to sit and read all of the books that I hadn't read and vlog my experience with you all. I then just finished up round 2. I made an initial TBR video and then I reacted to it. You can see my reaction. It was last Friday's video. Or you can sit here and hear what the third list of 12 books is going to be. And I'm very excited because I picked a theme with this one. I felt like it was really important that I make sure my reading is as diverse as possible. And while I do a generally really good job with this, I figured it wouldn't hurt to have a list of books that I have to read in the next 12 months that are all LGBTQ plus books. Every single book on this list has some type of LGBTQ plus representation in it. I don't know what all of them are, to be completely honest. I just looked for them to be listed on Goodreads as that. There is an exception, and it is the very first book. The first book up is Treads of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse. And like I said, this is the only one that is not marked as LGBTQ plus on Goodreads. And the reason is this book isn't out yet, so I don't think that it has been marketed much, and so a lot of people don't really know what it's going to be about. But I have read 3 Rebecca Roanhorse books. She has 4 out that I have interested in, but I've read 3 of those 4, and of those 3, all of them had major representation in them, so I trust her to give me representation in this book. And if she doesn't, I'm not going to remove it from the list. It'll just be the one exception. So I believe this is a short novella, and I believe it is about 2 sisters who are fallen angels. And there's some type of element in this world that is a post-war world where only fallen angels can see the element, and so they are forced to harvest that element for the rest of the world. These 2 sisters have been separated because of the war, I believe it is, and so one day they are reunited and things go poorly, and one of them ends up having to defend the other one in court, I believe for murder. I'm really nervous about this one because it's a short story. I've really liked Rebecca Roanhorse in the past and I like her books, but I tend to not like short stories, and it also seems like it's far enough out of my normal fantasy genres that I might have a little bit of a hard time with it. Next, I have The Miseducation of Cameron Post. So this one, very quickly off the top, I'm intimidated because it is not fantasy, but I read Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth, who is the author of this book, of course, and I really loved that book, and I've been wanting to read this one actually longer than I wanted to read Plain Bad Heroines, but it is like a contemporary coming of age queer story that is going to handle a lot of rough topics, and so I've been nervous to pick it up. But it is about this young teenage girl named Cameron Post who, on the day both of her parents die in a tragic accident, feels relief, and she feels horrible for that relief because she no longer has to live in a world where her parents will know that she is gay. She moves in with her very conservative aunt and grandmother and is trying to figure things out about herself, and she becomes really close with this new girl in town, and then all of a sudden her aunt has other plans for her and sends her away to a conversion camp. And I believe that most of the story is going to be about Cameron Post at that camp and trying to make the best of this horrible situation that she's been forced into. Next, I have Razorblade Tears by S.A. Crosby. So I have read his previous work, which was Wasteland Baby, and I was shocked how much I enjoyed that book because it really did fall more into a crime story, not following, you know, like a detective trying to investigate a crime, but a man trying to seek vengeance. And this book sounds like it's going to be similar. So we are following 2 ex-con men, one black and one white, as both of their sons who were married were murdered, and they are investigating what happened. They are learning to overcome their bigotry towards their gay sons who are dead, and they are trying to stay on the right side of the law. S.A. Crosby does such a good job of like walking that line of the law and forcing his characters to make really hard decisions, and I'm really excited to see what he does with this one. Now, since the LGBTQ plus representation is murdered, I'm guessing before the book even starts, this one is a little bit iffy, but it does talk a lot about the fathers overcoming their homophobia, so I felt like this was appropriate for this challenge. And once again, I am intimidated by this because it does kind of not fit into my normal genre of things. Next, I have A Taste of Gold and Iron by Alexandra Rowland. Now, they are a new author to me, but they have written many previous books, and I'm kind of nervous about the size of this one. I feel like when I come into a new author who has written a few books and they're just kind of writing this like kind of big epic fantasy all of a sudden, sometimes the writing style won't blend well with my preference. So that's why I'm nervous about this one. This one is about a young shy prince. I believe he is like a young man, so not a teenager, but like a young adult man who is just trying to do what he can. His sister is queen of this realm, and she has just gotten a new consort, and some break-ins and robberies are happening around the palace, and so the new consort and the brother team up to try to investigate some things, and I do believe that they fall for each other. I know that there is some type of magic to do with elements in this book, but I'm not really understanding it yet, so hopefully when I read it I will. Next we have Scorpica. It's how I'm guessing the book is said. I don't actually know if that is correct or not, but this book we are following a young queen. Is she young? We are following a queendom where there has been peace for 500 years, and then all of a sudden girls stop being born, and people are going to try to figure out why this is and try to bring them back. We are following a warrior queen as she is collecting stories from across the land and figuring things out about women in this country. Next up is Earthflown, and this one I'm a little bit nervous to put on this list simply because I feel like it's been it's had a few announcements for when it was going to be published, and it still isn't. Right now on Goodreads it just says 2022. When I went to the website they said 2023. So if this one doesn't get published, I will have to replace it with something, but I really hope it does because it sounds so good and I've had my eye on it for a long time. This is like a sci-fi dystopian fantasy kind of book, but I believe it leans more into like sci-fi than it does fantasy. And we're following Ethan, who is a healer on the front of this war, and this young woman is brought in who has a horrible gunshot, and he heals her, not thinking anything of it, and she ends up being the heiress to the empire. And so the heiress's brother starts sending Ethan flowers and showing up in random locations, and really is an attractive man that Ethan is not sure why is bothering him. Ethan finds himself very quickly in a conspiracy involving murder, drugs, and a project called Earthflown. Next, I have This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. Now, I did not read Cinderella is Dead, which is by the same author. I do want to read it at some point. I just have not gotten my hands on it. This is a YA fantasy romance about a young girl who has the ability to grow plants, and so she goes off to this manor in the countryside that her family owns to try to learn the most she can about her magical abilities, and then people start showing up on the doorsteps asking for healing aid, poultices, potions, whatnot. Then a young girl who has a dark, mysterious backstory shows up, and our main character starts to fall for her, and the two of them strike up a romance. But as they get closer together, our main character Briseis starts to wonder some more things about Maria. I am intimidated by this one simply because I haven't been really loving YA a lot recently, but I never want to give it up completely, so I wanted to make sure I had at least one on this list that I am very interested in it. It just intimidates me because I haven't been vibing with it. Next, I have City of Strife, which is an all-encompassing LGBTQ plus book. I have been told, and from my research, I have started to understand that there's every single type of representation you can have in this book, and the author themselves consider themselves aro ace, so that's great because queer author writing about queer characters. And this, we are following a city, the city of Isendor, and there are merchants rivaling for power who are pushing the poor people down, and then all of a sudden something happens where both parties are going to have to be fighting against a big evil. I'm very excited. I do believe, if I remember correctly, I thought there was a heist in this book at some point. Reading the back, it doesn't sound like there is. It says this is for fans of complex storylines, crisscrossing one another, strong friendships, and found family. It is a multi-layered political fantasy led by an all LGBTQ IAP plus cast. I've had this one on my TBR for a while, and then a follower actually bought it for me. Thank you, Mary from Olivia's Bibliophile, for buying this book for me. I want to read Pet by Okweke Emezi. So this book has been talked about a lot online, and that's simply why I haven't read it yet, why I'm intimidated by it. It is middle grade, so I do believe it will be very easy to get through, but whenever I hear so much hype about a book, it just makes me a little nervous. There are no more monsters in the world, and our main character sees a monster-like creature one day come out of one of her mother's paintings, and that creature's name is Pet. And Pet says that they are there to fight and kill monsters. And so our main character, Jam, has to start to figure out what's going on, where Pet came from. I believe they're going to team up, and I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of commentary about monsters and how they can probably never really be gone, and how they can be people who you didn't think they would necessarily be. That is all assumptions that I have made based on reviews I have read, but I'm excited to learn if I'm correct or not. Next, I have She Who Became the Sun, which is a Mulan retelling about a young girl who it was prophesied would lead to nothing, and her brother who was prophesied to be the greatest of all time. And on the eve of this war, the brother dies, and the girl takes his place to lead the people in battle to help fulfill the prophecy and keep hope alive. Now, I do believe that one of the main characters in this book is gender fluid, which is why I picked up the physical copy, because I had heard that sometimes it can get a little bit confusing reading from the different pronouns that change throughout the story. But I am nervous that it is going to be slow and daunting and is going to be kind of confusing to read. But recently I have been just loving slow political fantasies, and I don't know why, because normally they're not my cup of tea, but I'm not complaining, and I hope that I can get to this while I'm still in the mood for that kind of a book. Next, I have City of Lies by Sam Hawke. It is about two siblings. One of them, the boy whose name is Joven, is a quiet, studious boy, and no one realizes that he is the poisoner to the king. One day the king has an attempted murder on him, and so Joven and his sister Kalina must team up to keep the king alive instead of poisoning people. I love the catchphrase on here. Where to go? It's harder to save a life than it is to take one. I'm nervous because this book is thick. This is a really thick book. I haven't read anything by Sam Hawke before, so I don't know what I am going to be getting into. Also noticing that like a lot of the names that are listed on the back for blurbing it are very slow authors who I've struggled to get through in the past. So I'm intimidated by how thick and slow this book is most likely going to be. And the final one we have on the list is Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. So I did attempt the 10,000 Doors of January, and I DNF'd it because I just really couldn't get into the story. But I'm going to be trying this one, and I think that explains to you why I'm intimidated, because it's much thicker, and it is a historical fiction fantasy, which I tend to not like. So hopefully I'll like this one. Once and Future Witches is in the 1800s. The suffragette movement is just starting, and witches are no more. But a bunch of women join together to try and get the vote, and when they're joining together, they find these ancient papers that lead them to finding out more about witches. So that is my list of 12 books that I have to read in the next 12 months. I'm very excited to be getting to them, and I'm really glad that I finally made this list, because I actually made this list that I finally filmed this list, because I actually made this list like 2 months ago and I ended up accidentally reading 4 of the books on the list. So now I can actually read these books and I don't have to keep pushing them off for this video to be filmed. And I hope you guys like this video. I hope you'll check out the previous videos in this playlist, and I hope that you'll stick around and next July see how I did. I hope you're all doing really well. I hope you like this video. If you have any other recommendations for LGBTQ+ books that you think I would like, please leave them down below, especially if they are written by or about BIPOC author characters, preferably own voices, but you know, give me some recommendations. I don't remember how my outro goes, but until next time, I'll talk to you in the comments. Bye!